Well, so Napoleon Hill had the opportunity of interviewing and studying over 500 multi-millionaires and billionaires in his time, including Henry Ford and Andrew Carnegie. And after everything, he came to a realization that there were 6 basic fears that actually stopped people from becoming who they sought to be. And so amongst these 6 basic fears were the fear of old age and the fear of death. And so it is justified. And usually we tend to get the advice that when you're young, you need to have fun. That is a time for you to, put all the goals aside and then enjoy the moment because life is so short. I don't in any way doubt that. However, most of the multi-millionaires and the billionaires that we see out there actually sought to become who they are today, especially at a very young age, that is in their early 20s. And so in this video, I'll be breaking down 7 multi-millionaire habits that you can actually adapt and then subsequently steer yourself towards the attainment of your goal of becoming financially free, breaking away from your 9 to 5, or subsequently becoming a multi-millionaire. According to Napoleon Hill, desire is the single most important thing that you need to have in order for you to become successful in life. And so he goes on to say that desire is the starting point of all great achievement. And so in order for you to become successful in life, what you need to know is that you need to desire to become successful in life. In this case, you need to desire to become a multi-millionaire. Every single person out there, all the successful people out there that you can see had a very strong desire to become who they are today. And that actually entails you convincing yourself beyond reasonable doubt. This brings us to the first point, which is to invest early into your goals. Most millionaires and billionaires out there actually start very early in their lives. You can talk about Mark Zuckerberg. You can talk about Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett actually started investing when he was 11. And then he actually went on to start his first business, which was a vending machine business. And then subsequently, he sold that business to an army veteran in Omaha, Nebraska. Afterwards, he went on to do so many things. And then today, fast forward, he is one of the most successful investors of all time. Currently, Berkshire Hathaway, his company, has in excess of $300 billion in cash reserves. And that tells you a lot. If you set out to commit to the very things that you hope to become in the future, it gives you not only time to do and try new things, it also grants you the ability to seize opportunities. Think about the people, like I always say, who had the opportunity to purchase houses in the middle of London for as low as £20,000. Today, the average house price in London is round about between £250,000 to £300,000. It's not easy for you to buy houses any longer. And so if you couldn't seize the opportunities a couple of decades ago, those opportunities are no longer available for you to seize them. And that is why there is a need for you to stay conscious, stay focused, and then commit to your goals as early as you can. And of course, with the law of the aggregation of marginal gains, the more you contribute and the earlier you start to contribute, the more your returns would compound. And then due to the law of compounding, you're likely to see huge returns over time. And that is why it is very necessary for you to start early. This brings us to the second point, which is living below your means. The popular phrase, which is keeping up with the Joneses, tend to stop people from becoming financially free, and that is likely to stop you also. What you need to know is that multi-millionaires don't go out to purchase anything. They purchase assets, and then eventually those assets generate income to fund their lifestyle. Now, what the average person does is that anytime that there is an increase in income or an increase in their salary, they tend to inflate their lifestyle as well. So their demand actually go up as a result of an increase in an income. But what happens with multimillionaires is that when income comes in, they purchase assets, and those assets tend to fund their lifestyle. And so it becomes very easy for them to live lavishly without having to feel the burden of having to miss several payments or meeting payments or deadlines in the near future. What you need to know is that you don't have to buy things that eventually wouldn't bring money into your pocket. When you're setting out to build wealth, you need to try as much as possible and then avoid liabilities in the guise of assets. So ask yourself, this thing that I'm about to buy, is it likely to bring money into my pocket? If it is likely to bring money into your pocket, then it is an asset. However, if it is likely to take money out of your pocket, then that is a liability. It is okay to live below your means for now and then invest whatever proceeds left in the S&P 500 or any other investment vehicle that you set out to choose. This brings us to the third point, which is building multiple streams of income. So the average multi-millionaire has got at least 7 streams of income. Now, it is easier for you to start in your 20s because most businesses tend to fail. And on average, you're likely to fail 4 times when starting and actually scaling up a business throughout your lifetime before you're eventually going to find that one business that would help you to become financially free or that will steer you towards your multi-millionaire status. And so the earlier the better. Now that you're young, in your early 20s, you can start everything. As I sit here, I've started several hustles and I've failed with so many. However, the very two which are currently running is my Etsy shop and my Amazon FBA business. It is easier for you to try and fail when you're young than for you to try and fail when you're in your 40s or 50s, because at that point you have kids, you have several responsibilities. It becomes very, very difficult for you to just gamble with your money, in quotes, and to try other new things, because when failure sets in at that point, it doesn't only affect you, it affects you, your wife, probably, and kids. That is if you have the goal of starting a family. Now, the earlier you start it, the better, because now it is just you. And then in my case, it's just my wife and I. And so it is easier for me to take all the financial risk as opposed to having kids and having to take the risk. It becomes very, very difficult. And so the earlier you start it, the better. And that is why most multi-millionaires start in their early 20s and their late 20s. This brings us to the fourth point, which is education. Now, Warren Buffett goes on to say that the greatest investment that you can ever make is in yourself. And so he doesn't actually joke with education at all. It is reported that he reads at least 4 hours every single day, whilst tuning in also into CNBC to update himself on what is happening on the stock market and also on what is happening on Wall Street. That also helps him in his capacity as CEO of Berkshire Hathaway to make informed decisions and to place money where he's likely to get the greatest returns. Education actually helps you to scale up your skills. Now, every single time that you think about education, don't only limit it to formal education. Reading books, listening to podcasts, watching YouTube videos is also a form of education. And that actually helps you because, with the audio-visual interactions and everything, your brain is likely to remember these things as opposed to having to sit down somewhere all by yourself and then reading by yourself. What you need to know is that don't just go out to invest in the stock market or go out to start a business. Investing in yourself is one of the greatest skills that you can ever have. Education is not all that bad like people tend to purport online, that you don't have to go through school in order for you to become successful. As I sit here, I hold a master's degree in business finance. I'm not in any way trying to boast of it or anything, but it's actually helped me in so many ways in life. It's easier for me to pick financial statements and actually analyze them and to buy stocks that are likely to go up in future. It is easier for me to know which stocks are overpriced, fairly priced, and underpriced. Of course, with the knowledge that I gained through Brunel University. And all these things are likely not to happen if I hadn't subjected myself to education. And so what you need to know is that in order for you to become successful in life, you need to try as much as possible and then gain some specialized knowledge. It might not necessarily be formal education, like in my case. You can go through several apprenticeship programs. You can go through several mentorship programs. There are several seminars that go on there. Of course, you can tune into podcasts, several books, audiobooks, and all that to familiarize yourself, of course, with some accounting principles, with marketing, with sales, or any other interest that is likely to help you on your journey towards attaining that multi-millionaire status. This brings us to the fifth point, which is exercising the power of the Mastermind Alliance. Now, what that simply means is that you need to create a team or tap from the resources, the talent, the skill set, and the abilities of other people. What you need to know is that you don't have to get everything done by yourself. Think about all the multi-millionaires and the billionaires out there. Someone, for example, like Elon Musk himself isn't an engineer. However, he surrounded himself with one of the best engineers in the world, recruiting from NASA and other places in the world just to help him to realize a goal and the vision of launching spaceships into space. Now, what you need to know is that you don't necessarily have to do or achieve everything on your own. What multi-millionaires and successful people do is that they tend to fall on the experience and the expertise of other people. They leverage other people's skill set, their talents, and their abilities. And so you need to know that you need to try as much as possible and then surround yourself, build a network of people that would be able to help you to achieve that goal that you are setting to achieve. And that is to become financially free, to break away from your 9 to 5, to work from anywhere in the world, or probably attain that multi-millionaire status. This brings us to the last point, which is to take care of yourself and your health. Now, what multi-millionaires tend to do is that they focus on the process and not just the goal. Now, in Atomic Habits, James Clear goes on to say that people tend to fail in life simply because they focus only on the goals and not the processes that are likely to take them to the goals. Also, in 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Stephen Covey goes on to say that people tend to focus on the production and not the production capability. So in other words, they focus on the goals and not what they need to do in order to get to the goal. What you need to know is that you need to focus on yourself. If you have health, it is likely for you to go on and then achieve that goal. However, if you're stricken or you go on to compromise on your production capability, then eventually that goal of becoming financially free or attaining the multi-millionaire status would actually be nothing but a mere wish. And that is not what you want to do. I believe in you, and I know that if you set out early in your 20s, like you're watching this video, to take the necessary actions, mind you, you're likely to fail. But what you need to know is that you need to approach every failure as a mere opportunity for you to try something new. And I know that if you go on to try and to start early, you're likely, and I pray for you, that you become whatever you set your mind to achieve in the future. Thank you.